Welcome to the Grants Management module. The grant was funded. Now what? The Grants Management team is here for you to be a guide to share tips and resources necessary to ensure you have a positive experience while managing your grant. You received your grant. Congratulations! Now it is time to get to work and get acclimated to your project. Receiving grant funding means managing grant funding. Whether funded by the government, a foundation, or through another type of funding organization, effective grants management is essential. It is important to refamiliarize yourself with the grant that was submitted and approved by the funder. The funder might have modified the start date of the grant or made another modification. The terms and conditions that apply to your grant refer to guidelines and regulations that you must follow when managing the grant project. In this module, we will go over the Notice of Grant Award, expectations for retaining and organizing your grant documentation, introduce you to different types of rules and regulations you may have to follow to be in compliance, and tips for successfully launching your project. In addition, we will also be going over what it means to monitor your program to ensure successful implementation throughout the life of your grant. And we will also be touching on some department duties necessary to ensure compliance in regards to tracking students and class setup. The first document we receive to know your award is official is the Notice of Grant Award. This is the official grant award document notifying the grantee and others that a grant has been made. The NGA contains all terms and conditions of the grant award and provides the support documentation for recording the obligation of federal funds in the agency's accounting system. The NGA includes such things as grantee information, award information, project period of performance, budget period of performance, and terms and conditions of the grant. You might be wondering which regulations apply to your grant. All agencies have different post-award management policies, procedures, and requirements depending upon the type of project and funding source. The guidelines are designed to help you efficiently manage your award and stay in compliance with your own organizational and sponsor policies and procedures. Refer to your Notice of Grant Award for a list of regulations that apply to your project. Listed on this slide are examples of regulations you will want to be aware of depending on the type of grant you have. While knowing which guidelines and rules you need to follow are important, you will also need to be cognizant of our internal policies and procedures. One of the main set of regulations all grant managers should be aware of is the Uniform Guidance. We will have a separate module dedicated to Uniform Guidance, but wanted to give you a brief overview. Uniform Guidance streamlines and consolidates requirements for receiving federal awards made on or after December 26, 2014. Grant awards from state agencies, or WTCS, may require adherence to uniform guidance if the funding originated from a federal source. Requirements to follow uniform guidance would then pass through to Madison College. Next, we will be discussing expectations for retaining and organizing your grant documentation. Again, you will want to refer to your Notice of Grant Award for a list of regulations. These regulations will spell out for you what you need to track and document through the life cycle of your grant. This is necessary in order to satisfy the period of time following grant closeout, during which a project may be audited under federal law, as well as to meet the requirements of state open record laws for public institutions. Generally, grant files need to be kept for a period of 3 years following the closeout date of an award, and the Grants Office recommends keeping files for 7 years to satisfy all requirements. Madison College has a record retention policy that spells out for you how and where to store these important documents. You can contact the Grants Office for Madison College's record retention policy. One of the first things you'll want to do is set up a working grant file. Having an organized system allows you to easily access requested information, keep on track with your spending, allow for more efficient reporting, and to be ready if an audit may occur. Some items may be stored electronically and/or in a physical file. You will not be penalized for over-documentation. Some items you will want to consider to be part of your working grant file are listed on this slide. Now that you've gotten organized and set up, it is time to launch your project. It is recommended that you develop a detailed work plan based on the objectives of the grant. Share the detailed work plan with your program staff. Make sure your program decisions follow your budget that was approved by the funder and create a timeline to complete. When creating your timeline, it is helpful to work backwards, noting when specific tasks are due and how they relate to larger objectives that must be completed. Shown on this slide is a sample of a grant timeline outlining specific important deadlines. This was for a one-year Perkins grant-funded project. Monitoring your program is very important in successful grant management. Grant projects typically have a defined scope of work, sometimes expressed through the goals and activities outlined in the original application, and other times defined in a post-award document or grant agreement. In either case, there is an expectation that project activities will occur according to grantor terms and will track reasonably close to what was promised in the grant application. It is important to become very familiar with these requirements and to establish a system to document your progress in carrying out project activities, while also maintaining records that show you have done so in a compliant manner. You will also need to review your financial reports, making sure grant purchases follow the approved budget and are allowable, allocable, and reasonable. You will also want to make sure that your budget is in the right account categories. Any questions on this, the grants management team is here to help. Implement your project management tools, monitoring activities, periodically reviewing what you told the funder you would do, and measure your program progress against the plan. Here are some additional tips for successfully monitoring your grant. Schedule regular touch-base meetings with your grant staff to assess how the project is going and to help determine if any issues arise that can be handled proactively. The granting agency will look forward to receiving reports about your progress. In the Notice of Grant Award, it will outline for you when the reports are due. It could be quarterly or 3 times a year. The funder will most likely provide you with a template. As a condition of award, submitting complete and factually accurate reports on time is an important responsibility of the principal investigator. Late or inaccurate reporting can jeopardize not only the PI's funding, but that of other college projects. As a grant project proceeds, it is not uncommon that changes will need to be made to the project plan or scope due to changing circumstances or focus. These changes to plan or scope are often actualized through changes to the budget so that spending remains in alignment with grant activities and changing circumstances. It is important to know that all funders have specific guidelines about which changes require a budget revision and/or formal approval. Please contact the grants office if you have questions about your potential changes. We will guide you on the next steps. Departments or schools have several responsibilities when accepting a grant. Several of the responsibilities are tied to workday functions and will be covered in a Workday Procedures and Financial Procedures module training. For this module, we will cover client reporting and grant course setup as a few of the department's responsibilities for implementation, specifically if your project is centered around serving students and training. The client reporting system, with PeopleSoft being the data entry portal, is the primary means of documenting student participation in a grant. Client reporting allows WTCS to verify student counts, but also allows for internal analysis using the Cognos system. There are several elements of course setup to be mindful of when setting up a grant-funded course. Accurate grant-funded course setup is essential for accurate reporting and will tie back to the financials. Work tags will be made available by grant accounting. Depending on the type of instruction, there will be specific work tags that will need to be entered. Overload assignments are allowed at the college if the overload is for grant-funded instruction. If this does occur, an overload letter will need to be processed and routed appropriately. If there is part-time instruction, tag letters will need to be processed and routed as well. There are other specifics to be aware of when setting up the course, such as the grant program number and making sure that it is entered within the basic data page and is entered as part of the work tag so that all activity ties to the grant. This concludes the Grant Was Funded, Now What module. We hope that this presentation will support you as you start to implement your project. Remember, staff within the Grants Office and Grant Accounting are here to support you on this journey. If you have any questions along the way, please contact one of us to help. Thank you for your work on behalf of our students and the community.